back in person. Thank you, everyone, for coming. A quorum being present, this meeting of the Annapolis Historic Preservation Commission shall come to order. The commission operates pursuant to the Land Use Article of the Annotated Code of the State of Maryland. Local authority for the commission is derived from the Municipal Code of the City of Annapolis, Chapter 21, Section 56. The purpose of the HPC is to preserve, protect, and promote the preservation and appreciation of historic sites, structures, and districts. Requirements for serving on the commission are detailed in Chapter 21, Section 8.06. The HPC operates pursuant to the State of Maryland 1977 Open Meetings Act, and therefore no pending application shall be discussed between or amongst commissioners outside of the public hearing to determine the disposition of the application. Roll call. Will Scott.
Present.
Bill Williams.
Here.
Kim Finch.
Here.
Leslie Xavier.
Present.
Kim Golder.
Here.
Did I get you already? No. Kevin Smith, our vice chair.
Here.
And I am Bobby Collins, your new chair. Please bear with me. This is the first time I've done a meeting live, so we'll hope for the best. We also have with us this evening John Tower, our Chief of Historic Preservation, and Kim Consoli, our recorder, who records our meetings and keeps us on track. We have actually, let's do the announcements first. John?
So I am looking forward to moving these applications forward, reviewing them, and hopefully clearing some of our agenda so that we can focus on City Dock as it comes up. And I think it will be coming fairly soon.
Yes, that's what we've heard. I have one, it's not really an announcement, but kind of a general purpose announcement. For those of you that parked in Hillman Garage tonight, make sure you're keeping track of when the initial time that you paid for is up. If you're using a resident sticker that gives, or a resident code that gives you 2 hours, make sure you're paying attention, because if your time expires and you haven't paid for additional time, it can be rather expensive. So just kind of a FYI there. And Kim is going to be keeping track of it for the commissioners, I believe. Yes? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Approval of draft minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes. Kevin?
Yeah, are there any concerns with the October 10th minutes? All right, I move that we approve the meeting minutes from October 10th.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Those are approved. And we have the meeting minutes from October 26th. Are there any concerns about the meeting minutes as written? If there's no concerns, I move that we approve the minutes from October 26th.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those were approved unanimously as well.
Okay, new violations and status of active violations. John?
Well, there are always violations, but nothing really large or egregious. I did have a contractor call me and talk about his client, or his used-to-be client. I thought that was interesting. Replacing a window or two on Market Street. And then we're still dealing with the outfall of the many violations about outdoor trash and how to solve that. But that's minor. So mostly things are pretty good.
Good. We like to hear that. We have one item that is eligible for the consent docket tonight. The consent docket is a procedure designed to expedite routine items before the commission. In order to be considered for the consent docket, the application should have received a recommendation of approval or approval with minor modifications from all of the commission's technical staff, as well as the commissioners who are polled directly prior to the meeting. However, no application may be approved without the opportunity for public comment. The following application is possibly eligible for consideration on the consent docket. 26 Market Space. Is there anyone here to testify either before or against the item at 26 Market Space, besides the owner. Okay. Do you know how to do a consent docket? Or do you want me to?
Yeah, so, well, should we have him come forward to explain to him what the consent docket is?
I just read that.
Okay. So, as the owner of 26 Market Space, we have some conditions that we're going to have as part of the approval, but I think they're reasonable ones, so I'll go ahead and read them here. So staff recommends approval of the proposed front facade painting with the use of an appropriate primer and paint that is compatible with both historic and new mortar and brick. Is that condition reasonable for you?
Yeah, yes.
I think it's pretty reasonable. So, so based on that, I move that we approve 26 Market Space as part of the consent docket.
I second.
And with the condition that was read. So with the condition, again, I'll read it again. Staff recommends approval of the proposed front facade painting with the use of an appropriate primer and paint that is compatible with both historic and new mortar and brick. All in favor of approving 26 Market Space with the aforementioned conditions? Aye.
All right.
It was approved.
Yep. That's all there is to it. Just don't forget to take down your big white sign.
Okay, yeah, I will.
Okay.
And let me just say
Thank you. And thank you very much for being willing to have a conversation with us about this. All right. Okay, the next item on the agenda is, comes under old business because we've had conversations before, but never the full application, and it is for 69 Prince George Street. Yes, please. Before you testify, I am going to reinstate something that we were doing before COVID and we need to start doing again, and that is swearing in people who are going to testify before the commission. So anybody who is going to testify or speak on behalf of any of the applications tonight, Bertus House or 150 South Street, if you could all please stand and raise your right hand. It is the tradition of the commission to administer an oath required in order to testify en masse. This includes all applicants, staff, consultants, professionals, and any member of the general public seeking to enter into the record their comments regarding any of the applications which will be heard at this hearing. If you intend to testify, please rise and please rise and raise your right hand. Do you affirm, under the penalties of perjury, that the testimonies given and the statements you shall make are true to the best of your information, knowledge, and belief? Please state, I do.
I do.
Thank you. Oh. Yes.
There we go. Thank you very much. If you'll give me just a minute, it is very different to present after a year and a half being on my own computer screens and my own laptop. Just give me a sec to orient to this one. We'll see how it goes. All right, my name is Melanie Hartwig Davis. I am here from HD Squared Architects, located right here in downtown Annapolis. Congratulations to our newly elected chair and vice chair, and welcome to our new commissioner. It has been almost a year and a half presenting and having this dialogue, so I really appreciate the cooperation and input and collaboration. I have here with me Laura Houston. She is the project manager for this Bertus House Phase 1 with Preservation Maryland. I know that you have our actual application. I have a summary PowerPoint here to kind of go through at a high level, and some summary and also a new site section to talk about the heights. And then we can dig into the details if you have any questions specific to the actual drawings. I have a set of prints here of that to reference. And afterwards, I'll be able to hand out this presentation that I'm doing right now. I can obviously send it electronically, but I brought handouts in case we weren't going to be able to use the screen. So thank you very much. All right, on slide 2 here, some of this will be repetitive, but for the record, Burtis House is a 19th century vernacular structure located along City Dock at 69 Prince George Street on Spa Creek. It is the last remaining waterman's home of the Hell Point neighborhood that was annexed in 1941 or so by the U.S. Naval Academy. The state of Maryland owned the building for many decades and had state offices there for many years until eventually transferring ownership to the city last year in early 2022. So these are a couple of images, historically, 1982 history photograph from MHT when the state owned it, and then prior to that, 1941, when the Burtis House was in its prime function as a waterman's home and servicing the waterfront. This slide is from the application itself. This shows the existing condition of Burtis House. The 2-story balloon frame structure has a front porch with turned columns. The structure is approximately 32 by 30 feet and clad in both wood and asbestos shingles, with indications that the original siding was a German siding. The structure has brick pier foundations. The gable roof is asphalt shingle with boxed cornices. The only contributing facade to the historic home is the front that faces Prince George Street. The historic windows are 2/2 with molded caps, and a central transom-lit door that is currently there is not original to the home. There are 2 non-contributing appendages that include an enclosed side porch dated 1930 to 1959 or so at the waterfront, and a rear 2-story section addition that served as bathrooms and utilities, likely dating from the 1970s. The site on Spa Creek is in the FEMA Zone AE with a base flood elevation of 5 feet. The home has flooded multiple times, as documented as far back as 1915. This slide shows a more recent flooding episode in September of this year. The building is at a point where the structure risks demolition by neglect. Flooding and other extreme weather conditions are only predicted to get worse. According to the NOAA Relative Sea Level Change chart for Annapolis, by about 2050, City Dock area will see a rise of almost 4 feet, which will reach our current City of Annapolis code requirements for new construction and major additions to be 7-foot minimum finished floor elevation. The importance of lifting and protecting Burtis House cannot be understated. This slide shows rendered images photoshopped before and after. The existing conditions are on the top, and then the lower segment is the transitional phase that we call at this stabilization process. The scope of phase 1 is limited to the stabilization and mothballing of the historic Burtis House. As you know, BCT Architects is currently designing an addition to Burtis House that will serve as the Waterfront Welcome Center. HD² Architects was retained by Preservation Maryland when the state owned the building for this phase 1 limited scope, which is serving as a transition to the full City Dock transformation and adaptation for sea level rise. The current phase 1 for Burtis House is based on the 2021 feasibility study and serves as a transition to that future phase 2. The phase 1 scope is limited to, first, remediation of the existing Burtis House after multiple flooding events. Second, removing the historically non-conforming portions of the building, which include the side porch and the 2-story rear utility and bathroom addition. Third, reinforcing and mothballing the building as required for the structural integrity and stabilization of the existing Burtis House. The full restoration and adaptive reuse of the Burtis House will occur at a later phase. Fourth and last will be the raising of the structure to a new finished floor elevation of 8.5 feet. The site plan illustrates here the location of the Burtis House at the end of Prince George Street. The city owns 3 parcels at this location. The far left parcel is an alley and provides circulation from Prince George Street to what is currently City Dock parking. This will remain for emergency vehicles as a circulation path. Burtis House sits on the upper portion of the other 2 lots. The home will be secured and mothballed prior to being raised to an elevation of 8.5 feet. The porch will be accessed temporarily from a new stair at the top right corner of the building, which I know it's hard to see in this one, but you guys have the drawings as well. Right in this area is where the new stairs will be during this transition phase after the stabilization. The plans show where the two historically non-conforming additions will be removed. These are our construction document plans, but I felt that it was easier to see here these darkest images. This is the side porch that will be removed, and then the rear addition that will be removed. No work is anticipated within the interior of the home other than for remediation and for any improvements that are needed for structural integrity. The elevations illustrate the before and transitional facades of the building. In the area where the non-conforming portions are being removed, so here's on the rear one of the non-conforming, and then in the next elevation we'll see this side. In those areas, an exterior wood sheathing will be installed with a frame that matches the historic window molding of the front of the home. Preservation Maryland is coordinating the design and installation of murals in these two locations with students from the University of Maryland. Realizing that the Burtis House will ultimately be restored in a later phase, we are minimizing costs at this time and plan to capitalize on the available facade area as a storyboard for sharing the history of the Burtis House. This here is an example of the screening that will be below here as the house is raised on these two elevations here on the right that's illustrated. So this is the existing at about 3.15 elevation, and here is the Burtis raised at 8.5. And here are the other two facades of the building as well. The height limits of the historic district are easily met after raising the structure over 5 feet. The passing of Ordinance 15-23 earlier this year provides permissions needed for the WMC district height restrictions, as shown in this site section. The site section in this, and you'll have the handout so you can look more closely here in a bit. This has been revised from the site section that was submitted in our original application, so you'll receive this again. And then last but not least, these are images of the historic Burtis House adapted and waiting for the next phase. I'm happy to answer any questions, or I don't know, Laura, do you have anything that you'd like to add at this point? Okay.
Are there any clarifying questions? Yes.
Can you just briefly explain what mothballing entails?
Sure. It basically means we're going to secure the home from further damage. There will be limited electricity only for emergency use. There are ventings in the windows, selected windows, so that there will be air movement. Is there another distinctive?
Yeah, just generally protecting it from the elements and preserving it in place so that it doesn't suffer further deterioration, but is allowed to breathe and hopefully keep it secure until additional work takes place.
No carcinogenic.
Excuse me, Dr. Scott.
Alas, no.
Dr. Scott, push your microphone. Wait for the green light, please.
No literal mothballs.
No toxic mothballs. Absolutely not.
Anyone else? Leslie?
Yes.
So I noted that below the newer elevations that there were like caissons or foundations below the Burtis House. How are those going to be put in?
I'm sorry, say that again?
How are those going to be constructed?
Well, there's going to be, again, this is a
You're
transition.
drilling underneath the house, correct?
Yes, we're building underneath, yes. So there, we have geological studies that show, there are 22 to 35 feet of fill in this area.
Yeah.
So there are going to be segmented pile drivings down underneath this building to secure it. They keep going until they find that
Yeah.
strength that they need. And then it'll be clad in the brick after that, masonry units and brick after that.
So are you going to move the house in order to do that, or how is that going to be achieved?
Sure. So what happens is the existing house, what they do is they puncture underneath it in the crawl space with
Yeah.
I-beams.
Yeah.
And they literally jack up the house slowly, higher than the ultimate goal level. And then they work underneath it to build the foundation. And of course, archaeology will have to be in there prior to that work as well.
Wow, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Anyone else? No? I actually have a couple. Obviously, the non-conforming additions are going to be removed. Are there any other changes that will be made to the exterior that would force decisions about its permanent finished state? Or is anything going to be done to it that would make it impossible for, some design that may be coming down the road for its when the additions and everything goes on? Everything will be reversible?
I don't know if yeah, you can take that one.
So it depends on what you mean by reversible. So the siding won't be adjusted, the windows, those kinds of things. Anything that is added to the exterior for that mothballing is going to have no adverse effect on the structure itself and
Okay.
will facilitate further restoration at a later date. Obviously, the elevation of the building to reverse that would be rather significant, the new foundation, et cetera. So, it depends on what you mean. But there shouldn't be anything that prevents the plans that the city has for the building.
Okay, thank you. You answered it better than I asked it, so. John, do you want to do your staff report?
Sorry, John, can I interrupt? I did have a clarifying question. After you asked, I thought of it, or remembered it. So with the expectation that there was going to be an addition built to the house, how do you come to the conclusion of the appropriate height or elevation, considering that you're going to have a whole other structure attached to the building? And I don't, that seems like a difficult
Well, I just want
process.
to praise our team because they've done a phenomenal job in trying to arrive at that number, and also thank John over here and then BCT. We reached out to them and city staff to understand what they would need the structure to look like for the next phase. And so Melanie worked with BCT Design to arrive at that number and make sure that it'll be, it will speak with the addition and allow for movement between the addition and the Burtis house and ADA access between the two. So it was through a lot of teamwork and a lot of back and forth.
Okay, thank you for that. But it's when we don't know what the other structure is going to be, it's hard for us to make an approval today for this building when we don't know anything about the other structure at the moment.
Okay.
So I understand what you're saying, and we don't know, and I know that that's a long path ahead of us. But what we have done with BCT is worked in, and actually I'll go back to the building section image. We haven't worked at all about design of, in collaboration in that way with the future addition. What we have done is cut a building section, and actually the drawings that you have in the, have several building sections. So we worked with them to cut a building section just to talk about, for instance, the anticipated elevation of the grade at City Dock and coming over at Dock Street that they're planning for with the larger City Dock plan is to be 6.5 feet. And so they're just planning from a very conceptual level about the different heights. And so we worked with a section that had a very boxy, just about floor levels and grade levels, addition to the Burtis House, and then along with our own elevations, because Burtis House has very short ceilings, of course, as a historic home, and they need to accommodate for more infrastructure. That structure is going to have all of, the utilities and infrastructure once this is complete. So it was very conceptual and all about heights and elevations. It's a very technical approach to it, not anything about the design, if you will.
Okay, thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
That gives me one more question. I apologize.
No.
Are the piers that you're sinking now the permanent piers for Burtis House, or are they temporary with other ones to come in the future?
I can't answer that because I don't know what that addition, how it's going to impact. We had many discussions about various foundations for this Burtis House. We started with full FEMA wet flood walls, and that changed to then piers. We've added storage underneath. The administration requested that we have storage underneath there. We talked about a full basement. I think that the full basement idea has been abandoned, and so we went with the piers and having some breathability under it and having storage. So I believe that they're going to be permanent, but I can't anticipate what who's responsible in the next phases.
Okay. So in theory, we could potentially be lifting it up again and building new piers a second time?
No, I don't believe
I'm trying to get a sense
Sure.
of, I just want to make sure that we don't do anything that, as we were talking, that might prevent future, designs or future plans from happening. That's
No.
all.
Conceptually, that's exactly the same way we're reviewing the storyboard areas where we're taking this off. We don't want to invest and spend the money and the time to restore those, knowing that the back of the house example is going to have that face of the addition on it, so there's no point in investing there. So I understand not having a duplicity in expense or effort. I believe that the piers that we've designed now, they're obviously structurally going to be stable enough for this Burtis House to stay. The addition will be a completely separate foundation, and it's going to have, from what I hear, I know this is all new and to be determined, a substantial basement to it. So I believe they'll be independent. There shouldn't be any change there. If they were to come, we have discussed if they were to come behind and want to do a full basement under Burtis, first, it would just be really very, very costly. And so even now, at this point, it would be very, very costly to do that. So that's why we were leaning towards that's why we decided on the piers. There are some methods that you can come and fill in between those existing piers and work underneath the building. It would have to be primarily done by hand, obviously, but no, I don't see or anticipate at lifting the house again at all. That just wouldn't make sense.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. John?
First line that I'd like to read from this hot off the press staff report is the steadfast team of HD Squared and Preservation Maryland are to be commended for working through multiple possibilities and revisions. So thank you very much. I don't want to repeat anything that has been said, but we did receive conditional approval from the easement holder, which is Maryland Historic Trust. And they do have conditions, which maybe I should put in front of you, Bobby, unless you'd like me to read them.
I think a lot of commissioners haven't had a chance to read the staff report yet, so if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, I don't mind. It's this is quite a paragraph, but this was received a little late this morning, and I've included all of these conditions as part of what we will need to approve and the applicant will need to accept if this is going to be approvable by the commission. Okay.
Let me just, if I may interrupt, are we creating a situation where we cannot actually approve or disapprove this evening? Because we haven't had a chance to review these conditions, consider them, ask questions, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, what I would say is the conditions are fairly simple.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And they would actually, they comport with our standard conditions. And my own choice of guidelines for the project are very similar to what MHT's easement committee has chosen also.
Thank you. That's all I needed to hear. You know my dislike of hearing things that are only half-baked.
I would say that this is fully baked, but it came out of the oven late.
No frosting yet.
Okay, from the letter here, from Elizabeth Hughes, based on the review and recommendation of the committee, I grant conditional approval of the revisions to the design and treatment of the foundation and crawl space and design of the temporary north stair, provided the following conditions are met. Now there's some details here referenced. I'll just read them out. Details 2A-201A-214/A-2.2 show infill with the storyboard/image where the southeast side and southwest rear additions are being removed. This is something that was just described on the back of the building. Okay. While infill of the additions as a temporary measure is permissible until the final rehabilitation of the building, the storyboard is not approved at this time. Additional information on the size, scale, and type of image would need to be submitted for review and approval prior to installation. Ultimately, a more appropriate siding that matches the adjacent siding should be explored as a final exterior finish. Once a final plan for the infilled areas is determined, the scope of work along with the type of materials would need to be submitted on a change/alteration application for review and approval prior to installation. Please submit the actual proposal from the archaeologist or firm who will be undertaking the Phase 1, Phase 2 archaeological investigations for review and approval prior to the work being undertaken. The scope of the work should include a timeline for the implementation of archaeological work so that MHT staff can coordinate a site visit while the work is being undertaken. The permanent curation of the collected artifacts and records associated with the excavation must be arranged in an appropriate curation repository that meets the minimum standards prescribed in Chapter 6 of the Standards and Guidelines for Archaeological Investigations in Maryland, and in parentheses, Schaefer and Cole, 1994. Please be aware that as an easement property, if these objects are 50 years old or older, they would be accepted by the Maryland Archaeological Conservation Lab at the Jefferson Patterson Park and Museum without the standard curation fee, should you wish to donate them. Okay, and those are the conditions.
Yep. So it basically is two areas of significance that they're paying attention to, the infill area and the archaeology, basically.
Yes, and then there will have to be a subsequent, and this is also true for us, there will have to be a subsequent approval for the mural, whatever
Right.
it is, and that will have to be approved by MHT prior to our approval.
Right. Okay. Have all of the commissioners seen this area at one time or another, done a site inspection? Many of us have probably seen it on a regular basis, but has everybody had a chance to visit it at some point?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Kim, do we need to enter exhibits into the record? That's not something I've done before, but we have the application, we have the MHT letter, and we have the staff report.
Correct.
So those would be the three things? Okay, great. Okay.
Do you want me to continue? Since
sorry?
no one's really seen this, there's a little more.
Oh, yes, please, I'm sorry.
Right, so I added some additional guidelines, D3, preservation of significant original features, distinguishing original and historic features of historic buildings, and their sites shall be preserved. The project is compatible with that. And then D4, preservation of historic alterations, changes which have achieved significance shall be preserved. In this case, that's not applicable because none of the additions proposed for removal have achieved historic or architectural significance. And then finally, under D16, historic and replacement windows and doors, historic windows and doors shall be preserved in place unless documentation that justifies the replacement of the historic material is provided. Of course, this is compatible. We're mothballing the building to try to achieve the preservation of these elements. And then just to summarize, I recommended conditional approval. and conditional on the acceptance of the Maryland Historic Trust conditions.
Okay. We are now open for public testimony. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on behalf of or against this project? If you could state your name and your address, please.
Yes, good evening. My name is Rhonda Pendell Charles. I live 5 Domino Road, Annapolis, Maryland, 21401, and I'm the City Council Alderwoman representing Ward 3 in the city of Annapolis. First of all, good evening. The Burtis House is our house. And I, like I said, represent Ward 3 on the City Council, and I'd like to thank you all for this opportunity. And I'd also like to thank Ms. Kim Finch for being our representative, long-term representative, and done a fantastic job for Ward 3. I know we've spoken with the mayor about his vision for Burtis House and the city dock as well as our colleagues, and we've had several opportunities to take a look at it. But I'm just going to put in truly my 2 cents worth in tonight concerning the Burtis House as well as the city dock project in general. I'm a lifelong resident of Annapolis, and my family has been here since the Civil War in the parole area. Historically, there's been a thriving and busy African-American community and presence as far as the Watermen are concerned in downtown as well as throughout Annapolis, as well as the city residents are represented. That presence has since been diminished tremendously, but we are looking to revive that presence via telling the history of all of our city. The Burtis House is definitely a strategic part of telling our city's history, especially regarding our watermen and integrating it to our new city dock. I'm hoping that meeting these conditions that Mr. Towers indicated will not significantly impact this project, nor its purpose and importance. So we're here to support the Burtis House as well as the entire city dock project. And the mayor has given us a lot of information about that, and we've heard about it all along the way. But I'm just so glad to be here tonight to see and just to indicate, just in generality, about the Burtis House. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, we will close public testimony then and open deliberation among the commissioners, which basically means we talk among ourselves. Who would like to start?
I don't know what else can be said. It's on, I think, isn't it? Isn't
Yeah,
it on?
you gotta lean
Green
in
light's
towards-
on?
yeah.
Just lean in.
Just lean in. Is there any more that we really need to say about this? It seems like they've done a pretty good job, and I'm just going to take the opportunity to say, while we all recognize the way in which the Burtis House weaves into the fabric of telling the story of Annapolis and the Wooder and Waterman, and even the Historic Trust seems to be more concerned with what's under the ground, under the house, than the house itself. I'm going to leave it at that and say, let's just move along.
Okay. Anyone else? John, any last words?
Well, just want to say last week I reviewed the house with Laura Hughes and FEMA. So MHT, FEMA, it's pretty interesting. And I pointed out that what the Burtis House sat on was fill. But they were still very interested in what the archaeology might reveal. Of course, typically, if you have disturbed land, it is considered compromised because there isn't a particular source that you could pinpoint for any of the artifacts. They could have come from anywhere. So what we might find in the dirt and the detritus could be interesting. And I believe, although I haven't gotten confirmation, I believe that Applied Archaeology and History Associates has a contract for this. And then moving forward, I'm just curious if the lashing that has occurred just to get us to this point isn't so bad that maybe you might consider the next phase, Melanie and Laura. So that also needs to be developed for purposes of funding from Maryland Historic Trust and FEMA. and they said that in this room last week, that we actually need to start developing all of these specifications. So we don't have funding yet to do that, but obviously there's going to be a great push to get it done. So time is of the essence if we're going to move forward with the project, and the sooner the better, because the Burtis House isn't improving on its own.
Yeah. Okay. I think we are ready for a motion.
I move that we approve the application for 69 Prince George Street with the conditions, because the application conforms with guidelines B12, D1, including Secretary of Interior guidelines 1, 2, 5, 6, 8, and 9, guideline D3, D4, and D16, and that we approve this with the condition that was given by the easement holder that was read by John Tower.
We need to make sure the conditions are agreed to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just want to make sure.
So I move that we approve with those conditions.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion is approved. Thank you, Melanie and Laura, for your hard work, and thank you for working
Yes.
with us and bringing us, including us in this presentation for such an important building.
Oh, I was going to say the very same thing. So thank you for bearing with us and helping us get to this point. It's we're very grateful for everyone's input.
And that is the first thing on the city dock that's moving forward.
I know. Excellent.
First of
Well, thank
many.
you. And I will leave these. Yeah, if you can pass those out, that'd be great.
Okay, now do the same thing for South Street. If you can pass them out, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. That concludes old business. We now move on to new business. And since one of the items went on consent docket, we will work with 150 South Street. So if the people representing that property would like to come forward. Who will be presenting tonight? That would be me. Okay. Obviously, we've had a couple of online conversations about this property already. Have you guys seen all the things that went into the online record today, the letters from citizens and your letter and the staff report? Okay.
We have.
Did you see the last one? One came in
We
later
did, thank
today.
you.
Okay.
Yeah, it came in
I
late
just want to make
today.
sure you guys had seen them all, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had a chance to review all of those letters and wanted to talk a little bit about those tonight.
Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. So,
Is there a shortcut to turn this on? Do we know? Plug in. You just plug in the HDMI.
She said pull up what you're trying to present on the laptop screen, and then she'll project it on it.
Okay, so I'm plugging in the HDMI. I plugged in.
There we go. Yep. Magic.
don't we all love the pit in our stomach when that happens, right? Yeah. So first off, thanks for having us. My name's Leo Wilson. I'm with Hammond Wilson Architects. Andrew Fishback, I'll let you two introduce yourselves and then maybe talk a little bit. Is that all right?
Sounds good. Good evening, everyone. My name is Cody Monroe, with Annapolis Capital Partners. We're the owner of the building at 150 South Street. And as always, want to thank this board for its time this evening in considering our proposed upgrades to a building where we think it's long overdue. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Clinton Ramsden. I'm also one of the project applicants, and I look forward to tonight's discussion.
Great. So we've been here to see you twice on this project now. 150 State Street. We've discussed all of the proposed changes, so I'm not sure I need to get more of that in the record formally, but I can if you think I should.
Maybe just a very brief of where we left off last time.
Okay, that would be great. So 150.
Leo, can I just suggest that we need to, I would talk a lot about the pergola because that's probably the issue that was at most concern.
Understood. Yeah, we'll make sure as we get to that point that I focus on that, since I think we've covered most of the other ground.
Right.
So Andrew, let's just move through these if you don't mind. We know where the building is. We know the history of the neighborhood, our zone in the historic district. We've looked at the Sanborn maps in detail. History of the property. You can see the building in the back here as it's at shortly after it was built. This is it today. Fairly nondescript two-story office building we're fortunate enough to be able to work on. The good news is that for us, it's non-contributing in the sense that it's after the time of historic significance. It is on a bit of a tricky block because there's a transition from the area right by Church Circle down to some residential scale properties at the other end of the block. So what we've tried to do is to put in place architectural adjustments to the building that better mitigate the difference between the circle and the residential components. Essentially using the building as it's used now for office space and just trying to do a better job with how it meets the street and how it presents. So we did a context study to take a look at where the different pieces of the building needed to react differently to the neighborhood. And we talked about this at the last meeting as well, some of the different pieces we were trying to make sure we mitigated. I won't spend any time on this. All stuff that you've seen before. Now, Church Circle, we know that there may be some changes to this building at 1014 Church. We're looking at that as kind of one end of the spectrum. And then, the courthouse across the street as well. Important to note that most of these are three-story structures, the ones that are around us. Some of them are twos, though. And finally, I think these are the ones I think start to talk to the pergola element. So there's been some input from some of the adjacent property owners or property owners in the immediate neighborhood with concerns about the pergola. We just want to talk about that. There are places where, the pergola is a more prominent element, and we look at ones like Chop Tank, where that rooftop is indeed an intervention, albeit in a different environment. And then there are other pergolas that are doing a different thing. And so you can see the one on the left side here is a modest rooftop sunshade, essentially, as part of a residential project, an adaptive reuse one, which I think was successful. You'll see a similar element on the right side in the distance there, the wood trellis piece on top. Now, certainly these are, they have some visibility, although I would argue that they're fairly transparent in their sense of how they provide any intervention in the availability of light and air. I think it's fairly modest. Let's go to the next one, Andrew. It's interesting to note that the city dock project starts with, of course, what we just saw for Burtis, but also the parking garage. And the parking garage does indeed have a very similar component dead center of the historic district. Again, do we have a picture of the upstairs of it, Andrew? What's going up there? There you go. So, I would argue that this is far more visible than what we have in place on our project, and we'll show you that balloon study that we did for the benefit of those who weren't part of the earlier discussion. I know that D9 says that these types of interventions should be handled cautiously, and I'm paraphrasing. I would argue that the ones that we see here are previous approvals by this commission, and I would argue that ours is fairly modest in comparison. So I want people to think about that a little bit. Can you get the next one for me, Andrew? I don't think this one really matters to me right now. These are just pieces for the outside, so that's okay. The plans, you guys aren't really concerned about the plans of the building, so let's just go up to the roof deck. So just go back to that one if you can still, that plan. There it is. So there's the roof plan. The intention is to provide a green roof for this entire structure. The intervention on the roof is, as you can see, fairly modest. It's a very small percentage located in the center of what I'll call the bottom of the U-bar of the building. The building is intended to be utilized as an office space. We think that providing an amenity that provides access to an outdoor environment as part of that is a good thing. There's a green roof proposed for the entire structure, or for the majority of it. And I think it would be a pleasant place to sit. And I would argue that your ability to enjoy the historic vistas from this are pretty nice. And again, if you think about Choptank, you can see a lot from up there. And I don't think this has much to see from the ground. So, and it's very transparent. So next one. I'm going to move through this quickly. And if you think I need to spend more time on something, please let me know. In elevation, if you look at the size of this intervention, this is from the street face, and it's set well back from the from South Street. It's actually set kind of in the middle of the block, if you will. There's a stairway up to it, and it's a very thin mechanism that would provide some shade and a sense of place on the roof there. You can look right through it. Next, skip these. These are the ones that are somewhat important in this discussion because we created these images in a 3D model that we are testifying that this is an accurate depiction of what we're trying to do. So as you're walking down the street and looking at this building, there are many places where you would not see it. So let's cruise through these very quickly. This is from South Street, a little further down from the circle. We can just keep going through these. I just need a few more minutes of your time. There is the piece in the very back. Go back one, please. So that is the sum total of it, the darker piece at the top. And we put it in shade because, it would be in shade. So that's the whole point. Again, we'd argue it's a fairly modest intervention. This is what it would look like from the sky. Of course, there's not, I don't believe there's anyone that can see it from this point because this is above the courthouse. This gives you a sense of the scale of it, and you can see where it sits relative to the other buildings. South Street, really not much to see here. So let's go to the balloon test stuff, if we could. So one of the tools that the Historic Preservation Commission relies on as we look at these projects is what we call balloon test. And for those who have been doing it for a while, we did this when we did 110 Compromise. We've done it on several projects. But here we were asked to go up on the roof and mark the corners of the proposed pergola with these red balloons so that we could see where we were going to actually have the ability to see this thing from other places in the city. It's a breezy day, so you'll see one of the staff at my office is holding that up with a pole. That is, in fact, exactly where the top of that pergola would be. So that's to show you that we marked it there, and we did it with all of the corners. And then if we move through the rest of the slides, you can see the vantage points where we took pictures of what you might be able to see. So we walked around the neighborhood, tried to get a sense of what you could see. And, these are from Duke of Gloucester. There's our piece. We drew a red line so you could even more clearly see where that piece would be because the balloons are hard to see from this distance. That's the intervention we're talking about right there. That's from the ground. I would hardly say that that these are a problematic intervention in the sense of the view cones to the prominent buildings in the city from the public way. We looked and we couldn't find any. So, the Chief of Historic Preservation, John Tower, joined us for some of that. And at that time, it was my understanding that he agreed that this was, in fact, a modest intervention here. So this is from the circle. These are really hard to see. Now, again, John can talk for himself, so he can tell you what he said. This is the type of space I'm trying to provide up there. And so I'll just pause there for a minute and talk about the letters that we received.
Can I ask one clarifying question?
Yes, sir.
What you're presenting there is what I think of when you say pergola. That is, it does not have a solid roof.
That's correct.
And that is what you're proposing.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yeah. So can we go to the diagrams that show? So what we did is we received these letters, and I want to say at the end you'll see a letter from the applicants describing their efforts to try and get a handle on what the adjacent property owners thought, and the feedback they got was not problematic. But the ones that we saw today are the red outlined structures that are off to the left of this screen. And so I was like, well, let's see what we're dealing with here. What are we up against? What is the challenge? Who's going to see this? And so let's go to the next one. So we went back up and took a look on the roof of what I could see of those the people in the neighborhood who were concerned. And so there were 2 letters from the occupants of the yellow structure over there that were concerned about the outdoor, the use of the roof. And I was trying to figure out how problematic it would be. So I looked at the photograph, and I assumed the concern could be the view from the windows that could potentially see the roof. There doesn't seem to be many of them, but certainly that could be an occurrence. And then I thought, well, what would I be concerned about? Well, it's the noise, of course. That's what I would be worried about, is what is going to be happening up there. And so the letter you'll see at the end of the presentation are the limitations on the rooftop use that we think directly addresses those. And I'm not sure that the people who had concerns saw the letter, so maybe they can tell us what they thought about that. And then you see the 2 other small arrows on the right side that aren't on the yellow building, and those are the other 2 structures. And I would argue that, my goodness, it's awful hard for me to believe that I would have a detrimental impact on the enjoyment of the historic district from where I see those arrows go. So let's go to another spot on the roof and look. Here you see the same thing. We went to the other corner of the pergola. There's a little more potential for like a direct line, but I went over and looked at the way those properties worked. And the one on the right side has outdoor space. On the far side, down on the ground, there's no rooftop space. So again, the one on the left side, I'm sorry. I couldn't figure out how I would have an impact on their enjoyment of even the outdoor space, because theirs is on the other side. And they can speak to it and say I'm wrong, and I'm happy to hear it. And then the other one was the one that I found the most puzzling, because certainly, there's a direct access, maybe you could say, past the tree. That's a very big tree, actually. And I would argue that the outdoor use would be about the same time that the tree is more full. So, and you've seen it in the other pictures, but go to the next one for me, Andrew. So we found the listing for that house, and lo and behold, they have a rooftop deck over on their property. And so I was like, well, that doesn't seem right to me, like to tell me that I can't have one to use, yet you can have one. So I'm going to leave it at that. All I'm saying is that we are not the first people to ask to do it, and we think that that it's a fairly modest ask, and it will change what we think is the value of the building in terms of its value to the people who work there. And it is a workplace. So let's go to the last one. So this is a letter that that the applicant has provided back in response to concerns about the use of the rooftop. And I asked the commission to remember a couple things, but the first is that, this is an office building. The office building has decided that you want to provide an amenity, but we don't want to provide a problem. So the hours of operation will be limited to the hours in which you can work in the building. Most people work during the day, and we can talk with whoever wants to talk about what the hours ought to be. The hours of operation are not, midnight in the office building, and they just aren't. The ability to serve alcohol will be limited directly to the management of the building. So you're not going up there and having a party. You're going to go up there, and if you want to have drinks up there, it's through the management. There's no reason for any amplified music up there, and that's a common concern, that you're going to go up there and start blaring music and bother people. And again, I think there are ordinances in place in other places in the city code that control outdoor noise and raucous behavior and those types of things. So I'll close by saying that I understand, after having done this for so long, that there are certain things that are in the gray area. What's the right thing for each of these boards to look at, and what do we want to do to make sure we're preserving everyone's right to enjoy the space they live in and work in? I would also say that the Historic Preservation Commission has a pretty narrow set of guidelines. I think if there is an avenue for other people to be concerned about noise, I'm not sure that this is the place for it. I don't think that's it. That being said, the gray area, how do we handle it? Well, we proffer a letter that says we're going to control this in a way that I think is responsible, and in a way that I think addresses the concerns of those around us, in a way that I think is equitable and fair. And so the easy thing would have been to come tonight and say, okay, we'll back off and we'll just get the roof deck and we'll skip the pergola, or we'll do something different. And after discussing it with the applicant and thinking about what our rights are, we felt, I think we have an obligation to address these concerns, but I don't think we have I think it would be inappropriate for us to just walk away and say, okay, just because there's a concern, we should not do what we think is right. Because I think you have a responsibility when you come here to have a concern that's based on fact and damage or potential harm. We just can't see it. So. And I'll pause there and take questions, or let anyone else who wants to speak. Do you have anything you wanted to say? Or do you want to listen to Mr. Scott first? Go ahead.
No, I want to hear you first. Thank you.
I just want to say that tonight, I think, is, we're obviously here as applicants as part of the project, but my business partner and I are both residents of the city of Annapolis who care deeply about its effective governance and due process. And so I'm very curious tonight to learn about the lens through which this chartered board evaluates applications like this. There are really two factors that I think are primarily for consideration on this narrow aspect of it, and that is whether misleading or counterfactual public comment is able to remove objectivity by which this board is chartered to evaluate projects. I conducted a 360-degree site survey with the Chief of Historic Preservation, and during that time, he acknowledged that there is not a single material view that would be impeded by this proposed pergola. I also want to mention in the staff report, there is a comment about Standard 9. So this board is chartered by Standards for Rehabilitation. That comes from the Secretary of Interior. And Standard 9 states that new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction will not destroy historic materials, features, and spatial relationships that characterize the property. The new work will be differentiated from the old and will be compatible with the historic materials, features, size, scale, and proportion, and massing to protect the integrity of the property and its environment. The staff report states that the rooftop decks are highly visible and strongly discouraged. Both of those comments are not accurate. The rooftop decks, it was acknowledged in person, are not highly visible, and nothing in the standard states that they are discouraged. So again, I'm very interested to hear about the lens, learn about the lens through which these projects are evaluated, because this board, its work, its members, and citizens care deeply about the city. And it's extremely important to evaluate projects through an objective, chartered standard rather than in response to inaccurate, misleading, and frankly inappropriate public comment. Thank you.
I want to ask a clarification. We've talked about this and reviewed it a number of times, of course, so we're pretty familiar with it. And one thing, though, that I was trying to work out for myself based on that material and those presentations is you only have a little bit of property that's on the ground behind the building, right? Basically, you don't have any frontage or side yard. So my question is, and this is subjective, but I think it's to the point of what many of the letters speak to, and that's the concern about noise and sightlines and disruption to their community, their neighborhood, rather. Is there enough space that belongs to you that somebody could put one of the, you can get a loudspeaker radio thing, amplifier that's about this big, about the size of a big beer can, that produces a lot of sound. I know my son has one, he loves it. And you could put a keg of beer beside that, and you could have a pretty good party, or is it even too small a space for that? There's a little strip behind the back of the building, right?
It's not possible.
You don't think you could throw a party and stay on the property that we're talking about?
And in fact, Leo, I believe that location that you're accurately describing is where it's intended the HVAC units be positioned.
Okay, that is the area that I was thinking about.
So in fact, those HVAC units would then be removed from any possible neighbor's view.
Now, but I'll follow that up and say, I could easily do that in the courtyard. I could do that in the courtyard in the U.
Okay.
I could easily do that.
I just wanted to be sure I was seeing the site and what I thought was possible that could generate a disturbance.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from commissioners? Yes.
Hi, guys. I'd like to thank you all. I love the design and everything. I'm going to take the devil's advocate here, though. So when you spoke of the integrity of the environment, okay, this is kind of a sacred environment. And as a historic property or in an historic district, because the whole area of the downtown is in the National Registry. So preserving that ambiance here is also part of the history. So I understand that, you're making a significant contribution in taking this building and turning it into something that's beautiful. But the threat that this poses to some people that have residences here is like significant. And so I wondered if it would be possible for you to meet with these people that do have concerns, or have a smaller public meeting where you can address those concerns and reassure them that, your intention is not to just make money. And this is how people think about this, because you have commercial elements in a residential district. So this is what I'm just taking the devil's advocate here and expressing what I see. My house is out close to the stadium, and when I first moved here, it was loud, but not as loud as it is now. And noise just carries, and so people become accustomed to the fact that when there's progress, that progress equates to changing the things that are beautiful forever. So I guess all I'm asking is that to maybe take a step back and look at how the people that have lived here for a very long period of time and love and cherish the history of the historic district view this. That's all.
Yeah, what we may say immediately in response is if it's a commitment that this board is looking for, we have it on the screen. Our company's logo, signed signatures, committing to maintaining a certain acceptable standard on the roof. We will enforce it strictly.
Yeah.
And always. And we have no interest in producing an environment that would ever be detrimental to anyone.
I would also add that, yes, these are residential properties in close adjacency to a commercial property. This commercial property has been there since 1947, and our intention is to elevate the user experience of an office space. Office working hours in this country are generally from 9 to 5, and we do not anticipate activity that exceeds that the end time. So I understand that change is a different thing, but it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. And as Mr. Monroe just stated, we have already, I believe, gone above and beyond in addressing prospective threats to neighborhood disruption by defining, even prior to HPC approval or building permit approval or even use and occupancy permit, already defining the ways in which these concerns will be addressed.
Mr. Bill?
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying there, and it's difficult to design and build within the city. The city is unique in many ways, not just in the historic view. You've addressed hours of operation as far as the business, but is that going to be a lease contingent when you lease the building to somebody? Or you're going to say you cannot work after 6 o'clock in the evening? I mean, are you going to control the building that tightly?
Yes.
And then what about the people who buy the building after you? Because then that pergola is still going to be there. And you cannot say that you can control them. I mean, that's the question here. How is it going to be used historically in the future as much as it is now? You're putting an amenity up there. It's a nice amenity. No, Leo, I'm sorry. I did not see in your documents how that would be secured after hours. Keep people from going up there.
Yeah, there's a fob system to get up to the roof that can be set to hours, much like the keys to my office are. So if you are a tenant in this building, because we're not anticipating a single user, although there could be, but the hours of operation of the roof are much the same as hours of operation of a parking lot. Like, I can't use that fob to get to the roof beyond the hours of operation. There's a lock on the door, so you can't get up there.
So there is a door within there?
Yes.
To get up there?
You cannot get up there without going past security, and it will be a fob with an alarm.
So if I have a fob and working in that building and I decide to go there at 2 a.m., I can use the fob and go up?
You can't get up there at 2 a.m. because it's turned off.
It's turned off?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's the same system I have at my own office. You can't get into that parking lot unless it's the right hours.
Okay.
That fob is disabled.
And I appreciate the current owners looking at that, but I do worry about the future, just as we worry about the past. And if you have an amenity up there, I can see where eventually someone is going to want to use it after hours and find a way.
Yeah, I would argue that, well, I appreciate your point, and I understand everyone wants to find common ground to move the project forward, but I feel like sometimes the ask is a bit beyond what I think is right. And if you were to look at the other office and residential pergolas on the roofs of the building in the city of Indianapolis as they exist today, I would be surprised if you could find one complaint. If somebody wants to complain about Chop Tank, I get it. I mean, it's a loud place, and we went through a lot of steps to keep that from being a problem. This is not that. It's a residential scale component on a relatively small building, and I'm not sure. I mean, I'd have to work hard to generate enough noise to get a call up there. I think the concern is overstated, and I think the ask to remove it from the application is beyond what I think is appropriate. So, I mean, it would, like I said, I do this all the time. You know this. Like, I'm happy to negotiate and try and work with people to come to common ground, but I only want to go so far as to be fair, and then I don't feel like I'm going to be treated fair. So, and my clients.
Not trying to be unfair.
No, I know. I know.
Just trying to look at the situation.
I understand. I do. And I appreciate your position, honestly.
Will, I want to get to, can we do staff report first and let do that, and then we'll take some additional questions?
Sure.
Okay. John, can you give us your staff report?
So aside from this one issue, you all got a glowing review. This is not the end of the world.
Certainly.
So I responded to, especially with reference to D9, not to noise. Noise is not something that I review. It's not a guideline. What I was responding to was the change in view, that would be within the view of these residents. The other thing is, you have King Charles Place, which you didn't include, but that's even closer. So this is in fairly close proximity to a number of houses, and it will affect their viewscape. So the viewscape isn't just from the ground. It is also from other vantage points. And I'm sensitive to that. It's important if someone objects to bring that up. And so for their purposes, this would be highly visible from certain aspects of their house, not everywhere. In terms of the other pergolas, didn't you all just get one approved?
Oh, we've gotten a few, I think.
Oh yeah, wasn't that just like,
Yeah,
anyway.
not that long ago. That's why it's so hard, because it seems almost arbitrary, the application of whether it's a.
Well, now I'm talking. No, I'm just kidding. So it may seem that way, but I think part of it is also how it affects different viewscapes. The other thing is, this commission is shifting gears right now. And part of it is because we're going live again. And these things have really been sort of, quietly going through the process without any real public input for a long time now. And I think that this is changing. You all had outreach, and apparently neighbors talk. This is my decision was based on the sensitivity to their reaction to the changes that would occur for them within viewscapes and not related to noise. I like what you all were saying about keeping it controlled. However, I left the office at 10:30 last night, so I don't know how you all are going to do that, because people work at all different hours. But getting up there and let's say having hours for the rooftop deck, I think that's a really good suggestion. With regard to what is on the old parking lot, the old parking garage, which was the adaptive use is now condominiums. Well, I don't think that's in a strong, let's say, viewscape there. So I think that one was relatively easy to approve. But the difference with some of these is that they are on levels that still have, let's say, heated space on them, as Chop Tank does. It's not, your pergolas there aren't on the roof. They're on a roof, but they're not on top of the roof. This one's on top, so it's an appendage. And really, that's the difference. Now, I think you all know that I really do support this design and this project. This is the one issue, and it's how should I put this? Even within my office, people think that this is going to be an excellent addition to the streetscape and transform it in some ways from concrete block and with a thin stucco veneer to something far more interesting. And it works with the courthouse across the street. That's what I had to say, and that's the way I interpreted it.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah.
So John, I appreciate very much your commentary, and I'm really encouraged to hear that you're not so swayed by the noise issue. It's really about the view shed and the impact it may have on the environment of the historic district. So that makes sense to me. And I would offer this, if the issue is, as transparent as I can make this pergola be on this third floor, if you call it that, you fully understand that I could do a complete third story and it would be in the rights of these owners to add a third floor, much like what's directly across the street. And it'd be hard to say that they would not be permitted to do that. So there's the ability to block the view shed within the zoning code in the historic overlay right now. So I would argue that this is the most transparent possible way to have done that. So I just think that's another piece of this to think about. Like, hey, if these guys want to do a third story on this office building, you'd be hard pressed to say they can't.
Well, that's a valid point, but it's not what you're proposing.
That's true.
I want to speak to that point that their
Okay, yeah,
discussion is raising.
Yeah, if you guys, we had a couple more questions over here.
I'm sorry.
Well, I really want to speak to the point that has been raised of fairness. I came into this room with a concern about the fairness in the sense that the applicant went to the expense, and we know it's an expense every time they take another step and spend some more time and effort to do something to prepare for one of our meetings, to do the so-called balloon test, which lets me see that, in my opinion, I don't think this is a great impact on anyone in the surroundings. Saying that and trying to be fair to the concerns of the neighbors, could they submit to us pictures from their backyards, from their windows where they're concerned that they would see the pergola? Because otherwise, I'm left with only what's been shown to me by the applicant and my own experience of the community, which is, this is hard to imagine would have a significant impact on anybody's lifestyle or experience in the community. And then I just want to, as a historian, add one thing that I think I've mentioned in our meetings before. Everybody, I'm sure, knows what gerrymandering is. And most people in historic Annapolis know that that was coined for a senator from Massachusetts named Elbridge Gerry. And we'll move aside from that. He also said that the only thing that Annapolitans did was party. This is in a densely developed urban environment of a historic colonial scale. I can't see the problem. I just don't see the problem. But as I said, to be fair to those who have concerns, if they can show me the problem that they have, and they would need your cooperation to put the balloons back up, maybe I would have a different opinion. At the moment, I can't see a problem with this pergola.
Kim?
And so, to that point, I am glad I heard from John, because that's where I was going initially with my question about your clarification as to what you were looking at. And I pushed it, okay. As to what you were looking at, right? And your consideration, because I am familiar with the fact that you said that you thought this was okay. And then I liked your addition too, that you had regarding, they took the extra time to do the test. And it did not seem that there was anything visual that was an issue. And I do think that we have to be consistent, and that noise is not anything that anyone can truly contain for real, because all of us can blast and have a party and have a get together from time to time. I live in a neighborhood where I tell you, our homeowners association has a lot of rules. And it's not a historic section. But I think that we just have to be mindful of what we can truly control. I don't think that any of us can say what a future owner could potentially do 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. And if any of us will be around to know what they would do, right? So I think that it's about what we actually can do. I think it's great, and I think it's important to have a time frame on the accessibility, because I agree with you. All of us work late. So someone working in their office late until 6, 7, 8, 10 o'clock is completely different than being able to access that space. So the issue is accessibility to that space. So if they can't, via key card, access that space, then the concern goes away if the concern is truly noise. Now, from a visibility, it appears that it's been determined that it's going to be hard pressed to find a visibility issue. And if noise is the issue, then that can definitely be impacted by access. And I think that you all have addressed that, so.
Okay. I need to do a couple of things here. I need to put all of the written items into the record. We have the application. We have the letter from the Capital Partners. We have 4 letters that came in from public, and we have the staff report. So, and on that note, I would like to open public testimony if there is any member of the public that would like to speak for or against this project. Please come to the.
Look around a little bit, and I'll tell you when to stop.
Madam Chair, I don't think members of the public were sworn in.
Everybody was sworn in at the same time. They should have
I
been.
don't think they all stood up and
Okay.
were sworn.
Yeah, I wasn't sworn in.
Okay. I'll swear you in when you get
I wasn't
to.
going to speak until I heard it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's
Yeah. When you step to the podium, I'll swear you in.
But I want you to pick up the house on Duke of Gloucester, the yellow house that's across from the parking lot. Probably your closest neighbor in town with a residential. So. I'm gonna. I said, sorry. That's my house there. See that very first green room?
Yep.
That's my bedroom. That's my kitchen, and I have a little side area there. So I have direct access to your.
Could we ask you to take a microphone?
Yeah.
Yes. And if you could state your name and your address, and then I'll swear you in.
So you're welcome to hold the house. Oh. You're welcome to. Anyway, my name is Martin Rutledge. I'm at 209 Duke of Gloucester Street.
If you would raise your right hand, please.
Yes.
Do you affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimonies given and the statements you shall make are true to the best of your information, knowledge, and belief?
Yes, I do.
Make sure you push the button.
It's green, so is that good? And we didn't have much time to prepare. We just got the letter for comments maybe 2 days ago, was it? Maybe 3, so, and nobody from your companies or you or anybody ever came to our house, or, I did see a drone flying over the house one day and somebody parked in our driveway. I don't know if you guys hired somebody to look at the overview, but nonetheless, no one's ever come to talk to us. But we have direct view of that, of your roof. We're your closest neighbor, actually. So you're welcome to come over. You're welcome to come over, Commissioner. So you can see where Doctor, come over too, so you can see where we would have direct view of that.
I appreciate that
Gazebo,
offer.
or whatever you call it, because I don't see any pictures of gazebos in historic times, so I don't even know why this is even being considered, honestly. Because when I tried to do my roof, I had to jump through so many hoops just to replace a
That's
normal
what they're doing.
roof, you know?
That's what they're doing right now. And
No,
I
they
would,
don't.
I appreciate the invitation, but it's your responsibility as the person with the concern to come to the open meeting prepared to demonstrate.
Who told us? Oh, now?
I'm sorry, everything is announced on the city website constantly, and all one has to do is check it. And
Okay, I get it. But we got a letter 2 days ago, so maybe you shouldn't have sent the letter out, and then I wouldn't be here tonight, and I just have to live with this
That's right.
historic
They
gazebo.
were going beyond, above and beyond.
Then why would you put a letter out 2 days before a hearing and ask us to comment on it, and then tell me I shouldn't have commented?
Could I
don't
interject
get it.
here?
Okay.
So I think it's important to, because you may not have done this before.
No.
Right, it's important to focus on how if this proposed pergola is going to affect you in terms
Right.
of not necessarily its use or the possibility of noise, but how it affects the integrity or the unity of the viewscape
Is a
within.
gazebo?
Well, but this
on
isn't a
roof,
gazebo.
Historical. It's like one. And when people are going to be up there, did you ever see pictures in those days of anybody sitting up on their roof having lunch?
Yes.
Yeah, well, good. When you see 'em, when you come over to my house and look at it,
Ever
come over and
since
see me.
photography was-
All I know is when I tried to put a roof on my house, you guys made me jump through hoops. It was a regular, I was replacing a roof. And I had to send pictures and photos and showing I didn't do anything to alter the historical aspect of my 1749 built house. So you would approve the roof going up. I had to do interior pictures, everything else, to show I wasn't doing anything wrong to wreck the historical aspects of the place. Now, when I look out my bedroom window and kitchen window and my living room down there, I look at a gazebo on a roof. That's not historical to me. I'm paying all these taxes to live in a historical district. That is not historical to me. And I'm kind of rambling today because I'm not prepared. I didn't know the procedure. I work, people work. They don't have time to read all these reviews. I thought this was going to be a fair thing. You put out the information. I wrote I had 2 days, we wrote it, and now you're telling me.
Your testimony is important.
Yeah.
And this is the first time that we've had a public hearing in several years, but you do have the opportunity to speak. But I think that it is important to focus on how this is actually affecting your viewscape. And I think in your letter you wrote that this would be directly in view for you of
right about where they're sitting.
Right.
Further than that.
Right. So
I would be looking at that.
That is what I would focus on.
Well, that's what I did come up, but I kind of got annoyed, kind of listening to the one gentleman kind of make it sound like we're making up some kind of thing for, not you, over here that he was talking to, you didn't talk to neighbors, I'll tell you that. You didn't talk to me. Were you your closest neighbor?
No.
We kind of, my wife and I kind of put up with a lot because we're the first home that butts all the businesses. So, they cut lawns at 5:30, they clean with the mower. We let everybody do it because they say, well, we're coming early, it's a business, we didn't know your house was there, we didn't know your bedroom was there. We live with all that. I know noise isn't going to be the problem here. I have to find out where to complain about that because no way people aren't going to be up there watching the Blue Angels and the fireworks and everything else. So I need to find out from you where I could address that issue because I think that's an important one too. But it clearly affects our view. We'll be looking at the steeple of the church. We'll look at the State House, and then we'll look at a gazebo on a roof. Not historical to me. That's all I got to say.
Yes, sir.
I didn't swear in.
Okay, we'll do it again then. If you could start with your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. My name is Andrew Hare. I live at 203 Duke of Gloucester.
Do you affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony given and the statements you shall make are true to the best of your information, knowledge, and belief?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
I'll make my remarks very brief, but I want to support Marty because I've actually submitted written comments. I own the property at 203. Before I even get into my two main points, I take issue with the point of the equivalency of the photograph you took of my porch. There is a large difference between a residence that has 2 people and an office that has a porch with dozens of people. Totally unequivalent. So don't take that as an issue that you think, well, just because he's got it, we ought to have it. My concern about this is really coming in a very basic way. Is it keeping, and Marty hit on this, is it keeping with the simplest, the absolute simplest of preservation norms? And I hope this commission spends a little bit of time thinking about that. We live in the historic district. My house has a foundation built in 1810. It was redone in 1870. You said this thing was 1947. I find that the architectural patina of this house, and I said this in my written comments, is unacceptable. It's not for me to decide. It's for your client to decide whether they want to do this. Is it keeping with historic norms? Absolutely not. then let's get to the pergola. We've talked a little bit about noise and view. Yes, from this site, from our third floor bedroom, yes, I can see this. Is it going to be offensive? Probably not. If anybody in this room thinks that we don't have noise on Duke of Gloucester, I invite you for a glass of wine. We can sit on my front step and you can listen to the cars and the drunks going up and down Duke of Gloucester. There is a lot of noise already on Duke of Gloucester. If you put that pergola on, we just add to the noise. Will it be offensive? I have no idea. Will you use key cards to prevent people from going up there? Who knows? But trust me, when you deal with the public, or you deal with tenants, or you deal with things you can't control, they will do things you don't want them to do. So we can gloss over some ridiculous letter that your client writes and signs and gives you comfort that we're okay. But quite frankly, I think we're being naive. I rest my case.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Okay, I will close public testimony then, and we are in deliberations. Who would like to begin?
I'd like to go first because I actually have to leave shortly for family obligations. I appreciate the applicants reaching out with to the HPC with the pre-applications and to get our opinions ahead of time. As we've discussed clearly, the main part of the application I'm very happy with because it complies with so many of the guidelines, and it is a non-contributing building that we established in our pre-applications. And as far as the pergola goes, I won't be able to vote because I won't be here, but I will say that the pergola is set back significantly, and because of that, while the regulation is very clear that the rooftop decks are highly visible and therefore strongly discouraged, by recessing this pergola, it does minimize the view from the street. There's no views from the water. And again, like I say, this is a non-contributing building. So I deem this a feasible application. So thank you.
Next. Bill, I'm curious, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm curious your opinions as an architect.
Frankly, I like what's been done to the building. I think the pergola is a very interesting addition to the building. I don't know if the use is compatible, but that's not my call. I don't think that's our call on the use, but I do have it as a concern. Anytime a commercial building is adjacent to a residential area, commercial makes noise. That's part of business. We hope that it would not occur on late times or late hours. It is more office right now, therefore I would assume it's not going to occur. I do have a little issue with just a pergola on the building. I think part of it is historically for that building, there was nothing above the one line. The building is what, about 25 foot tall? Touch taller. Isn't zoning 30 foot in that area, or is it 40? I don't know.
The answer is probably about
20 feet. So, we're getting up where let's say they can put another story on. That would probably be perfectly legal. That would be perfectly appropriate for a commercial building there. if we were consider the pergola, and I'm going back and forth because I'm trying to justify it in my mind one way or the other. I like the looks of the pergola. I don't like the use of the pergola. I could see the pergola being a design element on its own. So I'm up in the air.
Says the pergola.
Yes. And unfortunately, I have no coins. I don't carry money in.
Yeah. Kim?
I take the wording here about protecting skylines and historic lines pretty seriously, and it says alterations that diminish or conceal character-defining features discouraged. Rooftop decks are highly visible and are strongly discouraged, and it shouldn't be just read together. The rooftop decks are highly visible and are discouraged. I don't think we want to define use and uses for the pergola, or we can't control use of the pergola. I do think you have a courtyard area that provides an outdoor space function that can contain noise and is not visible and could serve much the same purpose as what you're proposing on your roof. And I think that under our guidelines, that would be a recommended alternative, that you have another space that actually is better protected and shaded and could be greened in, some more, and to provide the same sort of use you're talking about putting on the roof. I think the pergola, because it's this area is a lower roof than others, and it's sitting in the middle of a parking lot, I think it may be more visible than you think. It sort of looks like an ornament on top of a cake, I guess. So I would encourage you to consider containing this green area, green function that you're looking for in and within your courtyard area.
Anyone, any other thoughts from anyone? I am of a couple of minds. I do like the building. I do like the proposed changes that you've proposed because I think they function well in its surrounding neighborhood. It has the courthouse, which is a fairly contemporary building across the street. It has the bank building up the street. It has other buildings around it. I think the changes that you are proposing will fit nicely with the neighborhood. I do have a problem with the pergola. Initially, I did not. But as I have seen and heard from a multitude of people on this, I am very sympathetic to the residents who have written, the residents who are here tonight, and the residents who may not be here tonight. And who knows which way they would sit on this, but I am very sensitive to people who live in historic homes, have historic viewscapes, view sheds, and have concerns about what their views look like out the window. We don't protect views. There's no right to have a great view when you buy a house. But people who have a good streetscape and a good sense of our historic district feel like they are losing something if something that is not historic goes up into that view shed. And I am sympathetic to that sentiment, if you will. I'm not thinking about things about noise. We don't regulate noise. We don't have anything to do with noise. I am appreciative of the fact that you've gone and kind of thought about the issue of what would happen if there were a rooftop deck and how it would be used. I appreciate that you've thought of all those components, but that is not something that's not in our guidelines. I wish it was sometimes, but it's not. So that's kind of where I am. Which brings me to the next thing, that we have clearly a couple of different opinions here. We've also just gone from 7 commissioners down to 6, which is an even number. And I'm going to ask John, because I think I know the answer, but I need a second opinion on this. If we needed to, could we sever the pergola issue from the building issue and just deal with the building tonight and make the pergola something to be continued, if you will?
Of course.
Well, wait a minute. I don't think legally you can do that without the applicant's
That,
permission.
I know, but
No, they-
that's
they
the
would-
next step.
it would
I'm
be
trying to find
conditional.
out if we can do it at all before I ask the applicants their thoughts on it. Because I know this is a very important project. And I don't want you to get into a problem where we continue the whole, I mean, we could potentially continue the whole project if you were willing. We could vote on the building tonight and deal with the pergola as a separate issue that would come as another application to John, right? John, am I right?
Well, it wouldn't just come to me as
Well, it would
an
come to us
administrative
then, but it would
approval. Yes.
come
Yeah.
back to
It would-
us, right?
Right, it would be a revision to.
Yeah, I'm trying to give you guys some options because I don't want this to get too contentious tonight, and I don't
Yeah,
want,
understood.
I
Thank
don't,
you.
I mean, we could talk till midnight on this, and I don't want you to have to sit through that. What are your thoughts, given what you've heard here?
Well, candidly, I wish that Vice Chair hadn't had to leave. To
yeah.
make the discussion a little easier.
Yeah.
But if I can just have a minute to confer with my client.
Of course, take your time.
Yeah. I think either way, it needs to be tabled because we lost a person. I think it needs to be tabled.
But if it's tabled, I want people who have concerns to come to me with photographs, come to us with photographs from their property, and from the windows that have a view of the
If we
river.
sell the pergola piece, then they have the time to
Yeah,
do whatever to
yeah,
hash
yeah.
it out.
Oh, I'm fine with continuing it, but I don't want
Yeah.
us to do something that they then can take.
So, Kim, do you have to pick things up, and take them somewhere after this meeting?
I'm sorry.
For instance, these are the paper copies. This is the meeting folder. So
Yeah, I don't know why it's over here.
Sherry was insisting.
I don't know what we're doing.
Oh, I'll just take them.
I apologize for putting you guys on the spot. I'm
Oh, it's
simply
fine.
trying to give
It's
you
fine.
options that will give us the best outcome, so.
Yeah, we've had this conversation internally ourselves, not only as a result of the testimony that came forth from the neighbors today, but from a business standpoint, what makes sense for
Right.
that property, and
Yeah.
what we think we can do with it. And, we were on the fence about this whole third floor thing, and we said, well, this is going to be easier, it's going to be less expensive, we're going to just, we'll get the building going, and we're going to do our rooftop thing, and, we'll have that, and maybe we'll come back later and do something different. But at this point, we think we're going to go ahead and ask you to vote on the application as it sits in front of you today.
Okay.
And then if we have to come back with a different design later, we're going to be coming back in, we believe, with just another third floor, and we'll forget the pergola thing, and we'll just put the courtyard up above in the third floor level about where it is, only we'll enclose it with building. So that's where we're headed right now, and I don't want to seem like I'm saying, well, if we don't get our way, we're going to do something different. But the reality is that, the applicants feel as if they want to make sure that we're real clear about how the decisions are being made and what you guys are doing here.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
Yep, that's fine. And you're aware that if you decline today, there are set procedures and time limits and things like that for reapplication.
The reapplication, as I understand it, and I'm hopeful that you can clarify this, is that I can't come back with the same application within a year, but I can come back as quickly as I like with a different application.
John, help?
That's my understanding.
I was going to say, it
Yeah,
is.
a different design.
It's a different design. So in other words, if I receive a no vote tonight, I can come back with a 3-story building, which would in fact be a different design next month.
Okay. Kim?
Yes, because I think that what I just heard, that we really need to take consideration of what you just said, because a 3rd story would be even more disruptive to your line of sight than a pergola. So I think we have to slice and dice what we heard. It cannot be the same off. And what we're hearing is that what comes back is going to be more obstructive because it would be a 3rd floor because it's within what can be done. So I think that we need to make sure that we're very clear on that because that's what was just stated, correct?
Our intent at this point is to do just what I described to you,
Yep.
which is to go back and redesign the building, and we'll add a 3rd floor. So I can make that work financially too.
Yes.
So
Leslie?
I think the applicant has the right to, do whatever they see fit. And that's his prerogative.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, so long as we're aware that,
Yeah.
of that.
no,
Yep.
totally.
But I personally don't base my decision on
Oh, I'm not
anything
saying
other
that we
than what's
could. I just
sitting
wanted
in
to make
front
sure
of me
that we
right
all
now.
heard it, correct?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we all heard and we're
Yeah.
clear on that, Crystal. Yep.
And I don't know which way this vote is going to go.
I'm not
I
saying I
have
know
a
either.
few ideas, but everybody needs to vote in the way that
Sure,
they feel represents their interpretation of our guidelines.
Sure.
So, okay, I need a motion. Can I get you to?
I move we approve the application as submitted with the conditions that the staff has recommended. And if I may, you can't hear me? I move that we approve the application as submitted with the conditions recommended by the staff, and I will add one, which is that there be a pass-key system that will prohibit access to the rooftop after 10 p.m.
Is that within our purview?
Oh, yeah, we can add conditions.
I need John Tower. He's
No, I don't know the answer to that. And I think that the applicants have already demonstrated that they're interested in
We'd stipulate to that.
in controlling hours.
I don't think that there's a legal difference between us adding conditions and the way the Planning Commission does it. But remember that once we act, all conditions become ours.
Yes.
And that's why we have the authority here to add additional conditions. We're not stuck with not stuck, but we don't have to just accept what the staff recommends. We
Right.
can always add more or delete.
But is a usage condition within our purview?
That is
Yeah.
the real question, whether that's part of our legal purview.
So maybe the applicant will volunteer that.
Yeah, we've so volunteered it. We'll close the thing at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
And we'll add that to our application in writing, and yes, we're willing to do that.
So can we have the conditions read again? Can we have the conditions read again so we're all clear about what they are?
Yes, hang on one second. Let me pull it up. Because it's not on the drive yet. It's still an email. Okay. You write a long staff report, John.
mud. That's good.
Nothing compared to Roberta. I am Mr. Brevity.
All right, I'm sorry, I thought I had the right one, I did not, hang on.
What are you looking for?
I got it, yeah. Okay. HPC staff recommends conditional approval of the proposed project at 150 South Street as it is consistent with guidelines B12, D1, Secretary of the Interior Standards 1, 2, 9, and 10, guidelines D3, D4, D16, D24, and D28C. HPC staff does not recommend approval of the proposed pergola and roof deck, as this is strongly discouraged by guideline D9. So staff is recommending approval of the project with the exception of the roof deck and pergola.
Okay, my recommendation is as submitted with the conditions recommended by the staff. The staff's not recommending a condition on the pergola at all. Staff's recommending not approving the pergola, right? That's the
Right,
distinction.
yes.
Right.
That's the distinction. Kim, is that what you were looking for, a clarification on that point?
Staff is recommending that the project be approved without the pergola and rooftop deck.
That's what I thought the conditions said.
Yes.
That's not a condition of approval, is it?
That was as stated in the staff report. I think what you mean is you are suggesting that you vote on the approval of the entire application from the applicant.
Yes.
Not according to my recommendations in the staff report.
Not recommendations, recommended conditions.
Right, okay.
That's one of the good things about John's reports. He makes a recommendation and then he states the conditions under which he recommends approval.
Okay, so you are moving that we approve
with
the proposed
pergola.
project,
With the
period.
pergola. Yeah,
Okay,
that's even a simpler way, but then we don't have the conditions.
yeah, just, you are recommending approval of the proposed project. I need a second, please.
Second.
Second? Okay, I'm gonna need to, all those in favor? 1, 2, 3, oh dear. All those opposed? All right, now what?
There's no proxy for the vice chair?
I'm sorry?
There's no proxy for the vice chair's vote?
We do not have a proxy system in place.
It could only be in place if it was thought of beforehand for
Right.
him to give it to one of us for him. So according to Robert's rules.
Yeah.
That wasn't done in the.
I can call him, if that's acceptable.
It's up-
No?
I do have
No.
Robert's
Okay.
rule of order with
Yeah.
me, but I'm not certain
I don't
that you
think,
can.
no, I don't think you can do that.
Does Robert's Rules of Order cover cell phone votes?
Well, no, it wouldn't cover
Yeah, I don't-
calls,
No.
cell phones, but it wouldn't cover cell phone, but it would be whether or not you could
Offer a proxy.
offer a proxy, and then what it says the scope of the proxy is. It's normally something in writing. It's normally
It's
something
normally
in
in your
writing.
bylaws.
Yeah, but I don't, yeah, it's a Hail Mary. It's either that or table it until we can, that's it.
Okay, why does this happen the first night I'm sitting
I know.
here?
You're doing great.
Because it'll all seem like easy sledding after this.
Can we,
So I would think if you can get Kevin on the phone and put him on speaker, then
I don't know if that's allowed, and depending which way this goes, and
Yeah,
we could be
do
making
you
a
have to be
mess.
present
I think.
to vote?
Must be present to win, I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's what our bylaws say,
To
Bobby.
table.
they don't, I've,
See, that's, usually bylaws will incorporate something like Robert's rules in toto, unless they, and then make amendments to it.
Whenever absent, it is Robert's rules.
Yeah.
it says Robert's Rules, last edition shall govern the proceedings in all
Okay.
cases unless otherwise provided for.
All right, page 65, voting. 69.
I think we have to continue the case.
Yeah.
We have
Are the applicants willing to continue this to the next meeting? I'm looking to be fair here, so I'm looking
No, we
for-
understand. I think
for
we,
ideas.
first off, we appreciate the extra effort and yeah. You okay with that? Yeah, yeah. Can we just have one more minute? I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Does the index site proxy?
I'm sorry. So let me make sure I understand where we are. We've taken a vote. We're at a deadlock. We believe we have one more member who is eligible to vote that had to leave early.
Yes.
And so we would start potentially, I think what you're telling me is you would start the next meeting with a vote on the deliberations. Having closed the deliberations, the next meeting would start with the vote. Is that what I'm understanding? Or would we continue deliberation or what? Where are we? Because there's a motion.
If you have, I'm trying to think, if you have new material or we have new material, I would think that it could be heard at that point.
Bobby?
Huh?
Yeah.
We were just reading the section on proxy votes in
Yeah.
Roberts,
Yeah,
and it has to be arranged in advance.
okay.
Yeah, which is what I offered earlier, that
Yeah.
it would need to have been, done- like, if we could have gotten him to say when he said he had to go, what his proxy vote would be before, then we would have been able to do it, but absent that now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we need to continue it. We want to do it so that we can resolve this as soon as possible.
Right,
There
but
is
I just-
not an administrative meeting in November, so our next meeting would be the public hearing in December.
Right. Here's my concern, and I'll just be candid about it. What I don't want to come to is another meeting where I have a parade of other people who didn't take the opportunity to testify prior to this hearing and contribute to the discussion and open this back up to public hearing. So if the agreement is that, yes, we're willing to come back and finish the vote at the next meeting, the answer is certainly so. If it's we're going to reopen public testimony as part of that, and then that's a problem for us.
And I don't have an answer with you. I can talk to the legal office of law and get an answer, but I don't have the knowledge of, if it is legally allowed, I can't stop someone. But on the other hand, if it's not allowed, I don't want to, or if.
I guess for me, my question is, and we would have to definitely table this and probably couldn't answer it tonight unless someone over there has an understanding based on the bylaws. What format are votes by the committee held in? Meaning, some organizations, you can have an emergency meeting
Yes.
for purposes of just doing this.
Yes.
Therefore, it would not have to wait until the next public hearing, and it would allow us to finish today's business.
So say have an online meeting where we simply conduct the vote.
Correct. That is
Okay.
what I am
Let-
stating.
I can say that in the morning, I can call the Office of Law and find out if that's permitted. Because that would be, yeah. Yeah, I don't want to, yeah.
No, I know.
Yeah.
This not frequently, but close over here. You do not have to reopen, but you have to sit here.
Yeah.
And then take your vote.
So we've been doing a little research on our side, and in your bylaws under item 5.9A, in cases where the decision is not unanimous, the minutes shall reflect the votes and abstentions of individual members of the commission. So is that what I'm supposed to be reading, or did I miss it?
Yeah, that's what I've got.
Yep.
Okay. So, where's the type part? Where's the type part? So, again, I'm sorry to take so much time. This is not my bailiwick, the legal side of this stuff. If it sounds to me like, and I believe I've done this with the planning commission, where the vote is, it's the things are signed offline from the meeting. They're not done in the public eye. It sounds to me like what you're telling us is there may be a mechanism where you can have the vote with all of the members who heard the testimony present, and it doesn't have to be at a public meeting. And if you were to do that, then you would. If you were able to do that. Yeah, so that's a question for the Office of Law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. You guys could do a vote at some time, as such as the lawyers told you it was okay. Okay.
Would it be publicly viewable?
I don't know.
It would be on,
Yeah. Your mic.
Sorry. The commissioners would be on, the applicant would be on. And I don't have a problem with making it public, but then we have to, publicize it, and there's so many rules that I don't want to run afoul of here.
Yeah, if we're back to where we were, which is you checking to make sure that we have the grounds to reconvene the meeting for the singular sole purpose of us to capture the vote because we were 3-3, then that's the only reason that, and I think that that's what you're going to find out, that we can do that. And if that is, then it's just that. It's just us for the sole purpose of finishing what we started today, but could not because we did not have a deciding vote. So I think that's what you said.
Yeah, and I just need the Office of Law to tell me that that's permitted and legal and.
That's right.
The other thing I would ask you to clarify with the Office of Law, I'm pretty confident, I'm 95% confident, that you formally closed the public hearing. Thus, there is no legal requirement to reopen the public hearing on this matter.
It's a good point. Okay.
Yep, that'd be the other part.
Sorry, I'm just making some notes here.
Yeah.
Okay, so taking into account his point, when we meet again, we will do nothing more than vote, and you will be there to see the vote. You're not gonna give testimony, anyone else is not gonna give testimony, we're not gonna ask questions, we're just gonna vote if the Office of Law says we can do that. Is that
That's acceptable to us, and we appreciate your indulgence in trying to work through this with us.
We're all in a pickle here, we just have to figure out how to get out of it.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right, well, that's what we will do. And I will call the Office of Law in the morning, and who should I contact? You?
You can contact me.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Let me find where I was here.
I'm wondering if she's working on something.
All right, that concludes new business. We have administrative business.
Thank you so much for your time. Have
Yes.
a great night, and welcome back.
I may not be back after this. Thank you for all your patience as we try to figure out the best way forward for this. John, any administrative business?
Oh, my parking.
Well, there are things coming up. They're all related to the dock.
Okay.
And it's going to be an interesting process. I know we want to be as accommodating as we can be. But we'll need an application, and we don't have that yet.
Okay.
I've seen many presentations, but we do need an application. I also encourage the CDAC group to come in for a pre-application. I don't know how many people have seen the plans. Has anyone? You and I, Kim, we saw them. Have you seen them, Will?
I'm not sure when you say seen the plans, what do you mean? The schematic?
Well, right now, at this point.
Kevin, you're in the building. What, did they bring you from the parking lot?
Oh, my goodness.
I think we have a solution here, gentlemen.
Yeah.
What, was he out on the street?
Elvis has re-entered the building.
He lives around the corner.
Well, I drive by here to get back to my house, so.
Do you have any idea what we've gone through in the last half hour?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
We are going back into session under new business,
You never
150
adjourned.
South Street.
You never adjourned. You never
We never
adjourned.
adjourned. No, I know.
You just came back
I
from
know,
a break.
but we concluded new business, so I'm going back into new business. We have a vote. Should we just do the vote again? All right. We have a proposal for, let me go back in. Who made the motion?
I did.
Okay, make the motion again
Make the motion that we approve the application as submitted.
without any conditions.
I'm for it. I vote for that, or I second the
Okay,
motion.
you second the
Second
motion.
motion.
Okay. All those,
All
huh?
right, yeah, I seconded the last one, but I guess it
That's
doesn't
fine.
matter.
Okay. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 in favor. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3.
Great. Thank you so much.
I don't know how you
Great
found
night.
him, but
It was not
He found his
me.
way back home.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you. Appreciate
all right.
it.
So this means I do not have to call the Office of Law.
But I think it's something that we should
Thank you.
know. No, but
No, I know. We will, but
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
it makes
this will
things
be the
much
last
simpler.
time we'll hear.
Great.
The planning commission
Thanks
does
again.
that consistently, right? About continuing the meeting, right? And continuing the deliberation.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The
I don't
planning
watch
commission,
enough of
because they had such large projects
Yeah.
that sometimes take so long to do everything.
But that's a difference
would
between what we
stop.
had. I think that's a difference,
Yeah.
though. You're continuing it because there's more to learn and do.
Yeah.
We had closed discussion.
Yeah.
And then we just had a 50-50, and
Yeah.
we needed, so that's different.
Yeah, they would stop just because of the length of proceedings.
Yeah, that's
Hang on one
different.
second.
I can't ever remember stopping because I'm so tired. Or laughing.
Yeah, this is different. This is completely different. This is completely different.
I just wanted to hear you all.
I knew you, but I couldn't say it. You told me, but I couldn't say it.
Oh, no, it's just kind of,
And I didn't think it was going to be that close. John, can we finish up real quick?
Yeah.
Sorry.
There's a call for other business,
Where did he find you?
and then we adjourn. Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Get back there. Oh, jeez. Well, thank her for us. Administrative, I'm sorry. I know you want to go home, so.
So no, I'm fine
City-
hanging out
City
here.
Doc.
It's so nice to see all of these wonderful faces, not on a screen. This is like an alternate reality. Anyway, yeah. So we just need to keep in mind that there's a major public works project. And there's going to be a lot to look at, a lot to understand. It doesn't yet have, and Kevin mentioned this previously in the joint meeting, it doesn't yet have the level of detail, specification that we would need to be able to effectively review it. So I'm hoping that that team is working toward creating this. I have offered my time. But I tend to, and I did walk with MHT and FEMA And we had a very productive meeting here, but both of those agencies want to see everything. They don't just want, oh, well, we're going to put an addition on the back of the Burtis house. They want to know what the addition looks like, and they want it reviewed. And FEMA's no different. And of course, the other thing, and I am certainly not trying to criticize because this is a public meeting, but it took a little while to get through the easement committee. And I think they were hurrying. So I'm hoping that our process does not slow the process. So I'm just saying we may at some point have a special meeting about this just to move things forward.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been requested yet.
As we all know very well, pre-apps are the best thing ever invented. And I hope that they would come and make us part of the conversation as early as possible, because that will ensure that we are not a holdup. Or I shouldn't say that will ensure, but it will help ensure that we know as much as we need to know when we need to know it, so that we can render a timely decision.
Bobby, can I ask John a question that I know will help me think about how we process these things going forward? Is it accurate to say that if they're putting utilities underground, we have no say about it except archaeological? That they do proper archaeological.
Well, as much as I tried to put the focus on the fact that a very large portion of the city dock is in fact fill. And there are advertisements, $5 for a wagon load of dirt. And it's amazing. You can look at the metamorphosis of the shoreline, how it changed through fill in times that weren't mechanized. But at any rate, archaeology is I don't think something that the FEMA or MHT are going to compromise on. We have to do at least a phase one.
Good. That's what I'm looking for. But the other side of what I'm looking for is clarification about. I've been asked, and I've seen written in things like Naptown, whatever that is. That somebody will say, well, what are they going to do with all those utility lines? Well, those are all very valid questions, but if they're sticking it underground, we have no authority over it.
We will always have authority over what can be seen.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but it's underground.
Yeah, if it's
you won't
underground.
see it,
So
is what you're saying.
I'm trying to avoid making myself try to think about, technical issues about conduits and all of this under the ground, because I don't know anything about them, and we could tie ourselves in knots. And the public, I'm afraid, will come, and not this individual, but the public will come and want us to consider all of those things when we don't have the knowledge or the expertise or the authority to do it.
I think you'll know what utility covers look like, and they're all over town.
Yeah.
It's the sort of thing that we have approved in the past.
Yeah.
And we don't need to know all of the nuts and bolts of what's underground. However, all of this is being designed now.
Yeah.
It's for those in the construction business, this is a fast track project.
Say that again.
A fast track project.
But he said something else.
I'm afraid to know what you thought. I don't
What did you think I said?
I don't know, but it had to be a good one.
Write it on a piece of paper and slide it across.
Yeah. Chair.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to be recognized. So when it comes to the plans, you and I were at that meeting where they talked about the plans in great detail. And it's my understanding that that information is on the city's website. All of those charts and graphs and figures and stuff. So when you said, have you seen it? A couple said, I heard a couple of us say they didn't. So perhaps if we can get that link out to everyone so that they can.
Are you talking about the stuff that was done at the work session or the joint
Well, there's been some redesign since then. I mean, if you think about it, when was the joint work session? It was September, wasn't it? So you know, we're a month and 20 days on with a very tight time schedule. And of course, the time schedule is dependent on boat show.
Yes.
Boat show rules what happens at City Dock, because it has to be, whatever is going on has to be finished before boat
It's
show.
the season. All I know is that there's iterations, and if that would be helpful to us to see the iterations. One was the one that we saw in this same chamber.
Right.
And then a few weeks later, we saw, is that where I first met you? Yep.
Yeah.
We had that one, and then we had the one that was virtual. So I don't know if having links to any of that might help us figure out some
Yeah.
things beforehand. Could be
Well,
helpful.
I'll see what I can, what's
Strong
allowed.
up.
The thing is, you know, so much of the staff that is involved with the project is in Amsterdam right now.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Right.
Amsterdam, jeez.
Riding bicycles.
Yeah, I don't feel sorry for them. They're in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
I'm just asking, I'm talking about getting permission to distribute information because it's been fairly tightly held. But
Okay.
the one thing I think that is important to keep in mind, and this really is an administrative business, is, and I said this to Elizabeth Hughes, who was the head of the Maryland Historic Trust, I said, for the Burtis House, which is historically the most important point on the dock for us, other than the viewscape, I said, whatever addition anyone has designed, including Michael Dowling, all of those additions have the effect, to some degree, of obscuring the Burtis House view from the city dock. In other words, the addition becomes the more prominent feature. We just have to work with the design team to make sure that we get to something that can be approved, because a great portion of the project, including emergency vehicle circulation and the Maritime Welcome Center, are all on Burtis House ground. And so they have to be approved by the easement holder, which is MHT. So it may be challenging.
John, are they able to even present anything to us for an actual approval until they have the MHT approval? In which case, we're talking months, most likely.
You're correct.
And
they cannot.
And I appreciate you reminding them that the Maritime Welcome Center, if it's attached to the Burtis House, must be subordinate. And
that's
the drawings I've seen did not meet that standard.
It's subordinate, right, sympathetic, et cetera. So, and I said, transparent, try and make it more transparent, such as the addition at the courthouse. Large portions of that are, transparent. And it works with the original structure. You don't get the impression, or the impression of mass is really reduced by using more glass. So we'll see. I don't know what the latest design is.
Would it be worthwhile to take a few minutes at the end of each meeting to kind of do what we're doing right now? Maybe not in a lengthy thing, but if we kind of keep our toe in the pond and kind of try to stay up to date on what's going on so that we don't get caught short.
Okay.
I'm not trying to put the onus
Right.
on you to stay informed and tell us everything, but I'm saying if we kind of keep it as a regular subject of conversation.
Well, I think that that's important. And then there's one other thing, and that is I have to create an RFQ for some qualified person to help us alter our guidelines.
Yes.
Rewrite them, edit, and so on. And
Yeah, I have that.
and tonight's item, the pergola, and things like utilities, these 5G antennas that
Yeah.
used to be this big, but suddenly must be, 8 feet tall and visible from everywhere with a federal mandate to approve them. Things like that. We have to address it. And there are there are new developments all the time. The propensity to go on top of buildings now is strong. And we're going to see it everywhere. And, we may see it at 80 Compromise Street. We saw it before. If the Atlas Restaurant Group can get zoning approval for a zoning change for the Annapolis Waterfront Hotel, we could be reviewing a large rooftop addition over their, parking lot, their parking area. So I'm just saying,
We have
we can't go wide, but we.
Can I ask you a question about the Burtis House in this part of our process? And I'm kind of going to lay my cards on the table to everybody else because I just feel like I should. I don't see why we're struggling so much over the Burtis House. I understand its historical, cultural significance, but as architecture, it's nothing, in my opinion. And so here's my question to you. Would you like to try and give me a brief, convincing argument now that I should treat it with more respect, or should we do that one-on-one over coffee or lunch or something? And I'm being serious.
Okay. I don't have any trouble with the recognition that it is a vernacular structure and that it doesn't have a great deal of ornamentation, and that its context has been compromised. However, what's important about it is what it represents for a whole way of life.
Yes, that's what
that is no longer represented. And I can tell you, and let me just go back here. When I was a boy, the dock was full of working boats.
Oh, when I moved here in '79, and it was full in the winter at least.
Full. And, it was, the culture at the dock was different. And this is that toe in.
But why are we hanging so much, or giving so much significance to a little wooden box when modern technology allows us to tell the story of the watermen and the waterfront so much more effectively with media of all different types?
Well,
that's really what I'm saying.
What I've been suggesting to
There's no context. It has a gigantic, ugly monstrosity behind it, and it's completely separated from the historical buildings.
I think this is inappropriate. Argument that you bring up is when we have a simple historic case, but this can be in a different discussion.
Well, I don't mind talking about it, but let me say that the most important thing about the Burtis House is we do have to deal with it. We do, because the land that goes with the Burtis House has an easement and a responsibility.
Okay, I'm surprisingly practical when I'm presented with something like that.
Right, you get the land, you got to deal with the house.
Yeah,
the other thing is, if you look at what's in the staff report, you can see the outline of the outbuildings. And they're actually fairly large and 2-story. So Captain Burtis had a big carpentry shop and he had a storage area. And, these things were on the lot. But they could, a nod to maritime design could be created there, a nod to what Burtis had. It's, we'll see where we end up.
Yeah.
Well, to me, the Burgess House is representative of a lifestyle, of a community, which is no longer there. Hell's Point does not exist. It is part of Annapolis that's virtually gone and would be lost to memory. That building, when you go near it, represents the height of the community and the width of the community as an independent element. You can feel what the community may have consisted of. Standing back and looking what's around it, all you see is a little house. But when you get up there to it, You feel the door, you see the windows, you see the reflection of the building and the history. And you know the building is that tall, not that little spot or that little piece of paper that's in the book, that little picture. It helps bring back the scale of a community and the life of a community. That's Burgess to me.
So, Bill, I would say well said. The other thing is,
it was very well said. I don't feel it. I don't see it.
So the other thing that we're so used to within the city is that we elevate houses that are not vernacular. And what we forget is that the majority of the city, or it's easy to forget, the majority of the city worked for a living. And Burtis made his living, by being clever and working hard.
Where the sign is, the ugly sign, then I would, I think, feel what you feel and feel the value of the Burtis House as part of that historical neighborhood. Where it is, I'm sorry, I don't.
Well, its period of significance is going to continue. It's not going to end.
So-
Have you been to the Pantheon? Do you know where the Pantheon sits? It sits in the middle.
Yeah,
And there's
yeah.
just a mass of buildings and people and traffic, but it's still.
You're hitting on the nub of my,
Please be sure you're pushing the microphone. You just.
you're hitting on the crux of what I'm trying to communicate. I've been to the Pantheon, and I feel what you just described. I've been to the Burtis House many times. I don't feel even a tingle of what Bill described for the Burtis House.
Well, we can, with MHT's approval, we can add an Oculus.
I think it's an agree to disagree. I don't think
Yeah,
they're going to
oh, yeah,
move
yeah.
his tingly
Yeah.
parts.
Obviously, this is a conversation we can have for a long time. We'll make it our mission to help Will become a Burtis House fan.
Well, I'll sit down and I'll go through all my photos of that area and see how many I can find of Burgess, and maybe we can bring you into the family.
I accept the invitation.
Will, John, I was going to propose that we put the guidelines conversation on the first administrative meeting in January. Okay. Anything else before we close out this lovely first in-person meeting?
Great job.
Yeah, you'll never forget it.
Yep.
You won't.
Till I look up and through the ringer.
No.
I need,
Question.
yes.
Our next regularly scheduled meeting would fall on Thanksgiving or Thursday.
We don't have administrative meetings in November and December.
Kim, you are expected to be here.
Yeah.
Yes, we will be checking attendance.
Was that going to be the way
Yeah.
you got out of cooking the turkey?
So then the next meeting will be another in-person meeting, so eat your Wheaties, on December 12th. Hopefully a little less involved than this one.
Yeah.
But I think we did good stuff tonight. So thank you, everybody, for your time and your preparation and your patience while I kind of fumbled a little bit, and
No, you did a great job.
we'll get through this. So I need a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn the meeting. Jeez.
All in favor?
All right.
May I say one thing real quick, if you don't mind?